We are going to get started so we can make sure we respect everyone's time. Thank you so much for coming. This is a much better turnout than we anticipated, so I'm so excited about that. So sorry that some of it is in a horseshoe. We will do better next time. Just so you are aware, we are recording this. It is not a live feed going out directly, but we want to be able to share with families who weren't able to attend. That way they aren't missing out on anything. So I will let Mrs. Inchko start.
So welcome, guys. It's nice to see all the faces today. There's a lot I recognize and a few that I'm like that are a little bit new to me, which is really nice to see too. So Renee Ensko, high school, and then Shauna as well, as she's introduced, for the elementary. So the purpose of today is just going to be pretty casual. We don't want to be up here talking the whole time too. We want to be able to hear from you and then have conversations with you. So I'm going to go over the norms really quick. Shauna's going to go over a few parts for our first meeting, and then we got a short little bit that we're going to talk to you about just for information piece, and then the majority of the bulk of this meeting is going to be hearing from you, talking with you, sharing ideas, supportive suggestions, just anything and everything that can help make this school system and the community stronger all the way around for our kids. So I'm really excited. I think this is a good thing. There's been a lot of work going into this and a lot of planning, so this should be pretty good. So a couple of the norms, and if there's times where if you need the bathrooms, they're right outside the hallways. The men's is on the left, women's is on the right. If you need to step out for a drink, do so. If you need to step out because you got to leave, that's fine. If you need to watch it again later to review something, like Rusty said, it'll be, or like Shauna said, it's going to be posted later for us all too. So a couple of the quick norms, which are going to be the commons for all of our meetings. One is be respectful. It's a common one, but we're going to have a lot of emotions that go into this sometimes, so we want to be aware of other people's concerns, other people's interests, their beliefs, and possibly even their values. So it's just making sure that we're all on the same page of the purpose of this is to come together for our kids, and in doing that, we just need to be aware of each other and what their beliefs and their interests are. Share the floor when speaking. So please try not to talk over somebody else. It's going to be hard when we're excited, especially if it's an idea that you want to add in on or jump into that part of the conversation. But we also want to be able to hear what somebody is saying all the way through and take time to listen to what they're saying as well. Another one, FERPA. FERPA is a big thing for us here at the school district. So we have to make sure that the privacy of our staff and your students is our number one concern when we're doing these kind of meetings. So if you have an issue that you want to share out, please share out the issue without identifying who that student is. So when I say that, it's not just the name of the student, but it's anything that identifies who the student is. So I'm not going to say, if I was going to talk about Missy and her son, I'm not going to say, well, he does this, he plays hockey, and he goes here and he goes here, but I'm not really going to tell you who he is. Like, those are all identifying markers to who that individual is. So it has to be very general, it has to be broad. If there's a question that comes to us that's specific about an individual, we're going to politely take the information, but we're probably also going to politely say, that's not your business, that's a privacy issue for that individual or that family. So we do have to follow that. And then open your mind, and that goes for us as well. So it's a norm for just all of us. We want to come here to be creative in our thinking. We want to come here to look at how we can expand what we're doing for our kids. We're sharing ideas, but we're also listening to some of the concerns that are there so we can start coming up with different plans of how we can address these and make it better for everybody. So just the 4 basics: respectful, sharing the floor when everybody's talking, remembering FERPA, and then the last one is just being open-minded and, seeing what we can come up with and how we can help our kids. I mean, that's what we're all here for tonight. So with that, I'm going to let Shauna go ahead on the next part, which is talking about our why.
So our main goal, we know there's been a lot of changes over the last year, and we hear you. We've read through the surveys. Parents want a voice. They want to be heard. We know that very, very transparently, there's a lack of trust in some areas, and we need to build that back. And we want to build that relationship back with the community, with all of our stakeholders. And it is, so it's an opportunity to have that voice. It's building healthy relationships, and in order to do that, it is building that trust back up. We need to value everyone's input, and again, like Mrs. Inchko said, we need to learn and grow from one another. That's the only way we're going to do better. We are definitely, so this is a circle that kind of talks about like our families, our providers, our educators, our community supports. We are not going to be able to do this alone. We are a team. So we can stand up here and we can do whatever we can as educators in the building, but without you, we can't do it. We need the community. We need the parents' voice. We need to understand what we're lacking if we're going to grow. We do the surveys, but we don't get as much information that we need in the surveys. There's always those unanswered questions. And for years now, Renee and I have said we wanted to have this parent dialogue and go back and forth, and we just weren't sure how to do it. We actually, when we did the community forum for the sixth grade moving up, we loved it. We loved the dialogue that it was. We loved how people had a voice and we could hear concerns and comments. And so that kind of like led to where, okay, how do we do that again, but to address other issues that we want to hear from parents. Just some facts kind of around it too. Effective family partnerships improve classroom dynamics. They increase the teacher's expectations, student-teacher relationships, and the classroom competence. Strong family partnerships can be the key to improving our school dropout rates. They foster educational aspirations. Family experiences are significant predictors of cognitive skills and social emotional skills. It's so important to have the family involvement for our kids. Students with supportive families are 81% more likely to graduate high school. So thank you again. We can't thank you enough for all of you being here. We know you care about your kids, and we appreciate that. 95% of the students with actively engaged families have better mental and physical health. Students with engaged families have a 98% average attendance rate. Students with families with low expectations are 5 times more likely to leave school during the 8th grade. 57.5% of the senior high school students strongly agree that having strong family involvement leads to high academic performance. So that is kind of our why. And so each meeting that we do, our goal is to do once a month. Each meeting that we do, we will have a new topic. We don't have the topics laid out. We don't have, because we want to let the conversation that we have in the dialogue tonight help guide us too of where we want to go. We have some ideas of what we want to share out, and we'll probably give you maybe some blurbs on that in it, but we want you to lead this with us. Like we are here for you, so you have a voice, and again, so we can do better. The one that we wanted to hit on first, and this first one was when we talk about behaviors and discipline, but our threat assessment process. Many of you, all of you, I'm sure are aware, we had an incident 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. We had a situation where a threat was brought to our attention, and immediately we start our threat assessment process. And again, we won't go into full details. We're not mentioning students' names, but we want you to understand what that process looks like, because we take school safety at highest level of importance around here. So if we receive a threat, we gather our team. Our initial team consists of at least one administrator, at least one SRO officer, and at least one mental health professional. We do a screener and determine if a full threat assessment needs to be completed. So the screener is the short version of just, okay, where are we at? Is it immediate law enforcement? Can we build this with maybe a safety plan? Do we have to go into, does the child need mental health support? You know, how to proceed forward. After the screener, if we do need to complete a full threat assessment, which in this case we did complete a full threat assessment, in that team, I can tell you that as a parent too of children in this school, I was able to come to the high school and know that my children were completely safe in the district that day. It was amazing watching everyone come together and really, like, we care about our kids. And we had 3 police officers on campus all day long. We had multiple administration in the room with us as part of our team. We had mental health. We had our communications director. It was a very cohesive, well-built team to make sure that all of our kids were safe that day. We then started the threat assessment process. In that process, we do we first need to determine whether or not the threat is real. We're looking at how far there's a whole platform of what a person can be on when they're going to have a threat. And so it's a pathway to violence is what it's called. And so we determine where they're at on that pathway. And we met as a team. We gather all of the information. We take any information from discipline reports. We are able to call previous districts and get discipline information. We send communication out to families the best that we can. You know, we can't, I know everyone, you can say it's vague and we didn't give enough information, but we can only give so much too. We send out details to let you know that your kids are safe. We are working on it, and they are safe. And when we say it, I wouldn't stand up here if I didn't believe it 100% to the core that every child in the district was safe. We then go through and we gather all of the people that we need to interview, and we break apart into our groups. We do 2 people to every interview to make sure that one person is having those conversations and we're not missing anything, another person to take notes, and that way there's also 2 people in case something was maybe misinterpreted or not, so nothing's missed. Then we meet back together as a team. We go through all of the interview questions together and see if we need to interview anyone else. We then look at the full threat assessment document. And in the full threat assessment document, we determine, again, what level of threat it is. So by the time we answer all 62 questions, we go through and say this is a low-level threat, a medium-level threat, or a high-level threat. And we determine the next steps. So sometimes it is a safety plan. Sometimes it is removal from school. Sometimes it is expulsion, which then goes to the board. No one threat is the same, but we run that same process all the way through every time. We have a very solid threat assessment process. So we just wanted to make sure everybody kind of understood that process and that there's somewhat of an understanding of what kind of goes on behind the scenes. We were here immediately in the morning. All of us were here around 7 o'clock-ish, and we were here until well after the day ended to make sure that we interviewed every single student and was able to make sure we were safe to return to school the next day as well.
And please understand, like that doesn't stop in one day. So even though that process started immediately when we got the information, which in that case was the night before, just because we did the paperwork doesn't mean that our steps stop. Like there is still ongoing pieces that we continue behind the scenes, and some of that is working with law enforcement or working with the families. So
that's a good point, because it does. Sometimes it's, I've done the trainings all the way up to become a trainer, so I can train anywhere in the state of Michigan for the threat assessment process. And one of our trainers, Dr. Reeves, had said to us, there was a student who, they checked him all the way through graduation if it was backpack checks. So I mean, it doesn't stop. So I mean, that is a great point. We don't give up on it, and we also come back and we review it. Because like I said, there is that pathway to violence, and just because we stopped it here doesn't mean that the child can't circle back around, so that is why it's important that we do continue to follow up on all of any threat assessment that we've done. Okay. We're going to leave the questions to the end, if that's okay with everyone. There is notepads and pencils if you want to write something down so that you don't forget. But that way we can kind of open it up for dialogue and we get through all the slides. So the next portion, again tying into discipline, is talking about our restorative practice updates. So it's important to just note in general, restorative practices, it's not just talking. We don't just get in a big circle like this and have a discussion and work through things. We do that. I mean, we help kids and we have those discussions, and they're good discussions. But it's a combination between the consequences, PBIS, which is positive behavior supports, and then our restorative practices. Restorative practice might be where we have students who maybe make some poor choices in the classroom or at recess or however in the hallway, and we do reflection papers. So we have a reflection room. Students can go in, they think about the actions they made and what they could have done maybe to do better next time, and then how can you repair that? So we also use structured day, So a structured day within both buildings looks like a student is removed from their normal homeroom, their gen ed normal homeroom, into what's called a buddy classroom. And so the student goes into a different classroom within the same grade level, and that way they are still getting their education for the day, but they've been removed from their peers that they normally see. They do not get to go to recess with their peers. They do not get to have lunch with their peers. They have what you would probably consider a lunch detention. That is also a time that they can work on that reflection paper, or we also have what's called an accountability project. So they also miss their specials for that day, because that is the time that we have them work on their accountability project, because we don't want them to miss that core instruction. It's important that they are receiving that, but they also need to know that there's a consequence for their behavior. So their accountability project is where, let me give you an example. If a student is caught vaping, okay, suspension is not going to necessarily fix that, but we can have a student do an accountability project where they go on structured day. Structured day can last up to 3 days, but can be less if the child does it like they are supposed to and is compliant and finishes their accountability project. The accountability project could consist of the dangers of vaping, and why it's so dangerous, and what it does to your lungs, and how it affects you for the rest of your life. That is a lot more impactful than sending a child home for 5 days because you were caught with a vape. We don't want kids bringing vapes to school. That's not at all what we're saying. And it's not that you can't be suspended, but it is, we try to really have kids understand their actions and what they're doing, and not just having suspension. Now, with that being said, it doesn't mean you can't suspend either. That there are suspensions. We won't say that there's not. You have, same with education in your tier 1, your tier 2, tier 3. There are some tier 3 students where we've done structured day and it just doesn't work for that child, and so it is suspension. It is parent meetings. It is, safety plans. So in the elementary, we have had 7 fifth graders who have done structured day, 1 third grader, and 4 first graders. Again, it does not mean we're not suspending anymore. It just means that we're trying to do an alternative suspension. Suspension hasn't been proven to work for many students, so we're trying to change that behavior. Do you want to give an update for the high school?
Yep, I gotta get back over here. Rusty yells.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. For the high school, some other things, we do the structured day more at the junior high, 6, 7, 8. We've also done some reverse suspensions for the junior high where the parent comes in and sits with the child all day. She's done the accountability projects. Our behavior coach and Mrs. Sanderson meet weekly every morning to kind of discuss whatever needs that the teachers are noticing or students are saying, or even our school counselors are bringing forward. So it's very much individualized depending what the need is. And then of course looking at, there's a difference between an elementary situation and a high school situation. So an elementary kid that is, for example, on the playground that just gets rough and punches a kid looks very different than a 6th grader or a 9th grader or an 11th grader that's punching a kid, right? So there's, like she said, there is still some handbook pieces that have to be followed. It doesn't mean that we can't do a restorative component with a suspension or an ISS or something else. So it does look a little different as they start to get a little older. There's more accountability.
Perfect. So for the elementary school, this is last year's behavior data for the up to the 3rd marking period. So this, because that's all I could pull for us currently right now. So as of right now, if this was us last year, this is where we were at. We had 50, and again, these are our total write-ups, so it's 145 write-ups. That doesn't mean it's 145 students. There was 38 of them that are more of a high risk, that is the students, 49 that was medium, and 58 that was low. This data is for 24-25. We have went down to 119, still 30, 36, and 53. I want to point out though that over 50% of our medium and low risk and even some of our high risk students, it's a lot of, it's that inappropriate behavior. It's talking, running in the halls. We have a lot of little friends that like to roughhouse because they like to play and they like to have fun, and then they play too rough and somebody gets hurt. It's that old saying, like, it's all fun and games until somebody, loses an eye. But they're roughhousing, but we document that so that, okay, we've told you we don't want you doing this, and now you've continued to do it. There's a lot of tantrums at our level. We get some friends that we're working on that. Again, leaving the classroom, and then it consists of even refusal to do work. So over 50% of that is documentation from that. I can tell you that we have less than a handful. We have a handful of students that are probably our bigger behaviors. It is not our whole school. It's running great. We notice a huge difference this year. Kids are engaged, kids are learning, kids are gonna be kids. So we're gonna have some behaviors, we'll never get that down to zero, I'd love to tell you, but that's not the case. But we are going down, and we are doing our best.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I can flip.
For the high school, same thing. So this is looking at 23, 24. One significant piece that I want to point out too is that is a combined building where 7, 12 was intermixed. And I say that because on the next slide, when you're going to see, you can go ahead and flip it to the next one, quite a difference. It's a significant difference. So is it restorative practices working? Absolutely. Is it the combination of having a behavior coach and an assistant principal that can deal with behaviors together? Absolutely. Is it more training with staff? Absolutely. Is it also the difference between separating the 9-12 and the 6-7-8? Absolutely. We see a huge difference in that. So like you could say, we still have issues. It's not to say that they won't go away, but it is significantly decreasing. For example, the swearing, I know that was a controversial letter that I put out. We maybe have had 2 in the last month and a half, 5-6 weeks. So I mean that towards a staff member, and so that has been an amazing change, which is a much needed change. So we do think that there's a lot of good things that are happening right now.
Agreed. So now, to the part that you've all been waiting for, is the open dialogue. So just a reminder of those norms: being respectful, being open-minded, sharing the floor, and again, FERPA, please do not mention student names. We will answer your questions to the best of our ability. If it is something that we need to get back to you on, we've asked Mrs. Paul to take notes for us so that we are able to follow up on it if we need to. We're not going to set a timer. It's not 3 minutes like the board meeting, but just share the floor. We want to hear what you have to say. So
it can be questions, it can be suggestions, ideas. It could be that you're like, hey, I really want to see more of this kind of communication going out, or I want to know more data on this point. It doesn't have to be necessarily you have this grand idea you want to implement or this huge concern. Like there's, floor is just kind of yours. We want to hear from you guys.
Does it have to stay under the title of behavior?
Nope.
no, not at all.
Yes,
not at all. Thank you. That's a good point.
Yep. This part will kind of drive our next meeting as to what topics we know we need to start hitting on or communication that we need to send out to families. Melissa.
Adult behaviors with staff and all of that, can you touch on that on the next subject? Like what the adults' behavior is toward children and young adults and what the policies and procedures and disciplines are for that, and who do we go to?
Yep, so if I hear you correctly, when adults are having a negative behavior,
with adults.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The adult is having the negative behavior, because I'm assuming when it's positive or not, it's concerned, but which could include talking down to a student. It could be demoralizing a student, maybe punitive discipline. I'm assuming such as like that. And then you want to know what that process is for how a parent or a family can report it and see action that would happen.
Part of another discussion. I know it's not on that today, but.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, and I can touch on it real briefly.
I have concerns, but it just came to my mind about that.
Yeah.
Because that would be my biggest concern with these guys. I mean, hopefully, I'm in elementary school right now. Hopefully, we won't have to deal with that.
Yep.
But but with the adults is my biggest one.
Yeah, I can tell you the real brief answer would be, and we can get into it more later. The brief answer would be, if you do have a concern with a teacher, please bring it to what we say for our communication. If you're comfortable talking to the teacher, talk to the teacher about it. If you're not comfortable with talking to the teacher, then you bring it to the next administrator. If you're not comfortable with the answer or the response you got from the administrator, at that point, then it goes to the superintendent. So that's kind of our channel. Same thing happens with bus drivers. Instead of bringing it to the administrator first, that goes to the bus transportation supervisor. supervisor, and then to the administrator, and then to the superintendent. So, but we can get into it more in detail next time too, but that at least gives you the basis of what you could do.
And on our district website, there is a graphic too, so you don't have to take notes on all of this, but it does break it down for athletics, behaviors, academics, bus drivers, all in the district website. And I know the elementary handbook has the ones that pertain just to the elementary. So, and there's a nice graphic right in the handbook.
Okay.
Yep, just so you have that for the high schools too. Okay. Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I have maybe just a general question. So when you talk about the behaviors being reduced, are our class sizes reduced as well? Do you think that's a part of it? Just out of curiosity, like do we go from 30 kids in a classroom down to like 20, for instance? Is that part of it maybe?
I think so.
Okay.
Because I could even tell you my highest group right now is my 7th grade group, which that had to go to 2 sections instead of 3 because they're a small group that we couldn't get into 3 sections, but it makes them a larger group for 2 sections. So in that, we've got extra teachers and extra parents that go into those rooms to help because it is more behavior in those settings. So I do agree with you. I think that when we have those smaller class sizes, we are seeing that difference too.
Yeah.
Is it always? No, but does it help? Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if you have anything different to add on to that one, but.
No, I would agree. I mean, obviously, smaller class sizes is beneficial in all aspects, academics and behavior. It's just easier less ratio with teachers, it's a smaller ratio, so.
Not that you can predict it always.
No, but of course it's gonna help. I mean, we'd like the enrollment to increase, we would like to have a problem with needing more teachers right now, so. But we'll work on that, so. Yeah, it is. But yes, the behavior, I would say it probably does pay something. Yes. Is it Jane? Jane?
The letter that went out about the swearing. I thought that was really an interesting thing. Why do you think it worked then? Why do you think that the behavior has improved?
I think 2 reasons it worked. I think one of the biggest ones is we had community support. We had family support. I don't think families were always 100% aware of what was happening. And I also don't think they were aware that it's not okay that it's happening, if I can kind of say it that way. Because sometimes with the individual conversations I'd have with a parent, it was like, well, that's how they talk to me. I'm like, well, that's not how we're going to do it here. So I think just that understanding of what's allowable in one setting and allowable in another setting, even if it's not quite the same as your own values in your home. And I think the community also kind of being aware with like, hey, we're really working on this hard, also encouraged. We cracked down hard right at the beginning and we were sending kids out, which I know goes against the state, doesn't want you suspending. Because we all know ultimately the more they're in school, the better off they learn. If they're out of school, they're not learning. And we can't control what's happening outside of school, so we don't try to. But we were able to crack down on it and send a message that was hard and fast. And it's made a difference.
The immediacy, I think, helped. The immediacy. You are swearing at the teacher, it's immediate. Call home, pick up, you're suspended. Done. Right.
So that kind of leads me to a follow-up question, because I think there's maybe a sense in the community that you can happen faster.
I think we have to start somewhere with it, and I don't disagree that there are some behaviors that need that immediacy, but like Renee said, we have to be very careful with the laws and what we're dealing with the state on that end. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yeah, and with that we had, we had parents complaining, we had students complaining, we had teachers complaining. So this was affecting more than one just domain, so it became a higher risk. Now, if I could take that stand on other things, there's good and bad to it.
But that's confusing to me. I want to expand on that, because swearing is swearing. We hear behaviors of hitting and threatening and kicking and whatever. Why would the law be, why would you not have more ability to crack down on those worst behaviors than those?
I'll comment on that one. Okay. I'll answer, because there are, so when we talk about some of our restrictions, some of our students who are exhibiting some of these behaviors are special ed students. We are federally tied to certain restrictions on that. We have processes that we have to follow. We cannot just suspend. When we reach a certain amount of suspensions, it leads to what is called an MDR, which is a manifestation determination of their disability, and we have to determine whether or not the behaviors that they're exhibiting are due to their disability or if it's outside. And if they're due to their disability, they're back in school. And we have behavior plans that we have to put in place, and we have to do all of those things. I think it's also important to note, we see certain behaviors, but we've watched some of our students grow from where we've started with biting and kicking and spitting and hitting, and we've sent home, we've not sent home, we've kept them, we've removed them from the classroom. We've grown to where that has stopped to now we might get some swearing. Do you know what I mean? And for the physical behavior, not clearing out a classroom, not disrupting an entire classroom, we look at some of that. I mean, we have to, again, weigh out those differences too, because similar to what Renee said with students of age, like a kindergartner hitting is way different than a 12th grader's, hitting someone. We do have to look at that when a student is a special ed student, because they have needs and they deserve a right to an education like anyone else, and we have to advocate for them too, but we also have to follow the laws, so.
In the swearing, Jane, we had a high number of students doing it. It was becoming common. So, and I get they're teenagers and they talk differently with their peers. I did too, right? And I'm not saying I still don't with my own peers. I still have conversations that I wouldn't have in a professional setting or a school. So it was becoming the common language across the board, where the hitting was more individualized, and while it's an extreme action, and we could take action against those, it was maybe 5 kids doing it, total across all the grade levels. So when you have 30 or 40 kids where it's like a common thing you're starting to hear, and it's coming across your plate every day, that was something we could jump on and get. It's not to say that we don't do something harsher for the hitting, and depending on what that level is, because we do. It's not always a sit down and we're gonna hash it out and talk. It's sometimes you're going home too. Because again, there's that level of age and what it is. It's just a different number of people in comparison to the whole group. Does that make sense a little bit too?
In one area we want to improve on too, I've worked with Mrs. Paul on this quite a bit, just even in the last week, after looking at some staff surveys, is going into the classroom and doing what we call like a Blue Heart plan, and making sure that the students do understand that that behavior is not okay, that if it was a behavior that disrupted the entire classroom, letting them know, nope, that child is not coming back today, like everything is good, we are addressing the issue, because I think sometimes, like parents and students, you don't see everything that goes on behind the scenes, and we can't share it always, but we can let them know that we are aware and we are addressing it, or if the behavior wasn't acceptable, that way they're not picking up on those behaviors either, especially at our little ones that are they're impressionable. They follow along, so. I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
I know that the LINKS program is new, but is some of that data, or how are you monitoring to see if that program itself is maybe helping some of the, that's what my hope was, is that the LINKS program could maybe peer-to-peer. Is that something you bring into a restorative plan? Did you bring a peer in as, or, I know, just because it's close.
Yep, we absolutely have. Have I shown data yet? No, but I can. I can get that from Erica and from Bree. They run the 2 different parts of the program.
But I just am
Yep,
curious
but I can get some data on that too.
If you're noticing, will that go away? If you're noticing that it's like, okay, this isn't working, we're not doing that.
We see it, but I think it's
Yeah.
good that we might be able to communicate out what it's looking like. I can think of a couple students specifically where they even had the same link from year to year. And so that building of understanding, it's an ASD student, and that building of understanding and social cues and what to do is really showing an impact.
And I know it's not just, that program isn't meant just for behaviors. It's more for a friend.
Yep.
That you just don't see. So it's not just specific to behaviors, but I'm just curious to see what that gets from.
She got that noted for me too, Kara? Thanks.
Can I, so,
Yeah.
on the peer-to-peer subject, this is me just being open and transparent. So my oldest son is a peer-to-peer and my youngest son is, but both for different reasons, right? So I will say, I think this year's class got, I don't know how they were selected. I guess I'll just say that. I think and probably even my oldest son, like, I don't know that some of those kids maybe are in that class and should be. I don't know how else to say this.
As a peer?
Yeah, I think that needs to be a very, like, more selective class. Like, I think we need to be more careful about who we're putting in that sort of a role. I think it'd be more effective if we had like kids that really like had a passion for it, or because I will be honest, like I think some of those kids that are in there right now, I don't think they're as effective as like a few years ago. I'm just being completely
Yeah, so what I hear too is possibly more of the mentor training going into it before we start releasing them to students as well. So it may be that they've got an interest, but we haven't guided them enough as to how to be that peer.
Yes, exactly.
Because I think as obviously as a mom to a teacher, you may see a different child than what I do.
Right.
Obviously, but I think to utilize that then, give them the training in a sense so that my child can be the best peer that they can be to. Like, is that? I mean,
That's
I
You're saying too, Cheyenne?
A lot of times I hear the teachers who are like, I love that kid. I'm like, that's the kid that makes my kids like hell. And then I find out they're links and I'm like, that's the kid that makes my kids like hell, but they're being a peer and a mentor and a model student to other, which I understand. They are different to teachers. Most of them probably have a teacher parent or know everyone in administration, so they're like the golden child. But I do think there needs to be more training so that maybe they say, okay, my behavior is great towards my peer, but I'm a jerk to everybody else. And that like, okay, how do I use my position that people look up to me to not be a jerk and maybe be a leader, still be the peer, but be a leader and a good role model in a different setting.
So the biggest way that they are selected for that class too is based on student selection, not based on adult selection. So when they fill out at the end of the year what their interest is for their courses the next year, that's one of the big criteria that we look at. It's not to say that as staff with like our counselors and stuff, we don't look at it, we cross off, but
Popular among the students, I'm just saying.
but that's kind of where that interest comes in for who gets in the class.
Behaviors.
No, I hear ya.
Students, but they're still holding their ground as a leader, which is great, but let's have them use it in a better way.
And we're-
Makes sense, like great.
Yes.
You're
Yes.
popular among your peers, you're a leader, you are in multiple programs, that's amazing, but let's do something good with it.
And we're addressing that at the elementary level too. So obviously what we build from the bottom is going to carry up, hopefully up top. So we have a peer-to-peer program as well. Just like Links, we've been doing it for this is our third year, fourth year? Third year?
I think
Third year. And we have our peers that work with a variety of students. We match them up, but we remind our peers that they are supposed to be a role model. So we give them one warning when you make a mistake of, you're either bullying or you have made some pretty poor choices, and we tell them, you are a role model for other students in this building, and if you are going to continue to be a role model and have this role, like you can't have behavior like that. So if they mess up, they can be removed from our program in that sense. So we are teaching it at that level too, so that hopefully as it carries up, they will understand that this is why you don't get to be in this program. We have a little bit more flexibility in that because they're not in classes, where the high school and middle school, they have to be in classes, they're in sections, where in the elementary, we're pulling, maybe they come at the end of the day to help with their peer, or they come for breakfast to help get their peer set up in the morning. So we have a little bit more flexibility with that.
And I do want to point out too, though, I appreciate the staff member who is the teacher. Her communication was great. Like, I got a nice long description, so I knew what was kind of in store for my child. So I just want to make that note. I do appreciate her continual ease of communication.
That's wonderful.
To reach out and there's back and forth, prompt back and forth, if there's concerns or, can you clarify this?
Yeah.
Because what my son's telling me might not be accurate, so.
In then me and asking my child who's in that class, like, are you doing this, are you doing that? It's like, so I just think if it was more like the school making sure she knows exactly what is expected of her too.
Agreed.
If I can say one more thing, sorry. So on the topic of peer-to-peer, have there been any discussions of having those sort of topics in all classrooms or available for all students? And I say that not necessarily just to be a peer-to-peer like mentor, but I will be honest, I am shocked sometimes at the behaviors amongst a friend group. And so I can't imagine what those kids must be behaving like to people that aren't in their friend group. So I just don't know if maybe all of the kids need some level of more understanding of like the impact of their words and just how to be a better friend. And you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, some of that should be parenting or what you learn or whatever, but I just don't know if that's something that could be available in curriculum for students.
It is.
Yep,
It is.
it is.
So, by the state, we have to offer SEL, social emotional learning, at every grade level. So there are focused lessons, and it depends on the age level of what that looks like, right? And a lot of it becomes repeated over and over. So yes, we do that.
Okay.
And we have those programs. It just needs sometimes to go a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
We use Second Steps if you want to look it up.
Second step.
Yep. So you can look at, and it's online, you can see kind of what it entails.
Okay.
That's one portion of it, so.
Jada, you had a question
I thought so
earlier.
too.
I was thinking, I was kind of going back to the swearing thing and just the respect towards adults in general and that kind of thing. And I'm probably gonna lose my train of thought here, but I was thinking about, like, I know we've got the new program where the Be Positive, you can speak to a more in your high school. I maybe share some of that because I think that some of those things that we've been working towards, maybe families know, maybe they don't know as much. I mean, I get school emails, so I know a little bit more about it, but maybe you just speak to that where you're promoting the good behavior, promoting the respectful behavior, and maybe how we can continue to expand on that.
Yeah, so some of the changes that we put into place this year, they were things that we were looking at and identifying last year. So one of the identifying factors that even Student Voice brought up was we have Student of the Month that recognizes approximately 10 kids, but there are a lot of other good things that are happening throughout. So trying to build up that culture of making good choices and also being recognized, because it's nice to get a little pat on the back once in a while. You don't have to, but it does feel good. So we had a team of teachers that got together. They came up with what they call Be Positive at the high school. And there's a assembly that goes once a month for junior high and once for high school. And they have a focus lesson for each month. So they have a very short slide presentation they put together. It talks about what they had worked on. It also introduces the next topic for that month of what they're going to be working towards. There's a little video goes with it. And then we also recognize all the students that had completed that prior month's goal. So the goal could have been attendance. The goal could be no missing assignments. The goal could be no discipline write-ups. So it's just, and it's simple prizes. The kids really have been liking it. The junior high absolutely loves it. The high school, they're getting more bought into it. The kids that really like it going into it, the kids that are kind of on the edge stand back to the group because they're kind of cool still, but then they're getting into it. Like for example, this one is they get a pop or a Gatorade. They've had a sucker. They've had a bee sticker to put on their laptop. It's not big crazy stuff. And the prizes were all brought to us from Student Voice. They did a full survey that went out 7 through 12 at that time because that's the data we were collecting from, and they picked out what kind of prizes they wanted. So we've done a popcorn one. We thought they were going to want more than that. That's literally all they wanted for it. They just wanted to be recognized. So that's one big thing that we put into play, and it's taken off. It's feeling good. Kids are talking about it, and they're working towards it. We also, for graduation this year, well, for honor roll, we did it a little bit different so we could recognize more students. We have the A and B honor roll still for the 6th, 7th, 8th, and then for the high school level, the 9th, 12th, we put in 3 different categories. Has that been published out?
It was today.
It was published out today? Yeah. Thank you. I'm like, I knew it was coming here real soon. And that was just trying to get more kids recognized for how well they're doing. And then to give it a little different look, so it's a little bit more of an upper level look. Like I said, with the 6, 7, 8, and the 9, 12, we were also trying to bring back a 9, 12 high school setting and give a true junior high feel. And then at the end of the year for graduation this year, there's also going to be more students recognized beyond just the top 10, because we're going to be doing the collars that also recognize their GPA along with still like those that are serving in our country or the Leo Club or NHS, but we're going to have a few more things that distinct some more kids. So we're trying to recognize more because it does spread and it does feel good, and it's important for all of us to see that too. So
I think just having kids at different age levels, I think it will take time. Undoubtedly, some of those high school kids aren't super into it yet, right? Like, they're not used to it. They haven't had that kind of recognition. It seems kind of perhaps youthful or whatever, but I don't think we should stop. I think we should definitely continue with that, because those junior high kids are going to come up and hopefully they will. So I do appreciate it. I know they're a tough audience, they are, but hopefully that culture will continue, I guess, in a positive light.
And it,
Hopefully, I think even if they never admit they like it,
They like
Right.
it.
it gets hard if you feel like the world revolves around the handful of
negative.
kids that are struggling.
Yes.
Or the
Yes.
challenged kids, like it feels like that sometimes. So they may never see it, but I think it's a big impact.
I think Blair was mad I picked her up early for class one day because she missed whatever.
The attendance one.
She was like, I don't know, but I was good, I was getting something. And I was like, all right, you have a dentist appointment.
Especially the kids, I mean, if they're good, pretty much all the time, every day they're compliant, but sometimes it's nice to get recognized for that.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, there's those little ones, and then at the end of that month too, there's still 3 or 4 students.
No, we pick one from each grade level.
Thank you.
One from each
2.
grade level, and we.
Yeah, 4.
What's that?
I was just-
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So and then we have gift cards. So we have, some businesses around the area donated $10 gift cards. And so, A&W, Starbucks, Burger King, different things like that. And bring those out and the kids get to choose. When our last month, it's actually gonna be a bigger month, and it's for any of our students that have been recognized for so many of the different B positives. They're all going to get one big reward. I believe it's a food truck, is that correct? So we're trying to make those steps
Cool stuff.
to build that interest.
And on the elementary side of it, ours is not every month. I would love for it to be every month, but we partner with Pathways, who Michaela Ryan is our Pathways person, and we tie ours every marking period to attendance and behavior. So it's not perfect attendance, but it is the less than 10% for that marking period. So it is that they've missed less than 1.5 days is what it equals for 10%. So anything over 1.5 is more than that falls under the truancy. But we mark it with 0 behavior referrals, and then under that 1.5 days, and we do a variety of rewards. So the first one we did donuts and cider, and then we had hot chocolate, or we didn't do hot chocolate, we ended up doing chocolate milk because we were afraid they'd burn. So we did chocolate milk, and we let them decorate cookies for the second one, and then the next one coming up, they're gonna have a pizza party is the plan so far. So, and then more than likely in the spring, we usually do popsicles so we can get them outside and have some of that fun stuff too. So we have a great attendance rate for that too. You think 1.5 is not enough, but we've had over, I think our highest number has been over 143 students or so, which is fantastic.
What other questions?
I just gotta say bravo to the elementary school, from my experience. Just with the announcements alone, when you say, in case anybody hasn't told you, and I could cry at the end of the day, or at the beginning of the day, that I love you. So I overheard that bringing in something one morning, and and the Pledge of Allegiance, and the last Veterans Day Assembly, I just gotta say, way to go.
Thanks, Melissa.
Yeah, so, yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
So just getting back to the threat thing.
Yes.
I know we talked about what happens after, but how, as a parent of a child that doesn't really, they're teenagers, they don't want to tell you, what is the day spot something, what is, so parents don't, 'cause I don't feel like we're really in the loop on that. What is the first step when the kid sees it coming?
So 2 things I can do. One, we have OK to say, and that's district-wide, and that's through MSP, and we've had students use it. So if a student wants to report but they don't know who to report to, or they don't feel that they are safe to report to somebody they know, they can do the OK to say. That immediately gets an MSP officer calling me. So don't get me wrong, like when it first comes across, I'm like, oh God, what is this about? But it's that. And then they give me very specific information, very detailed, because they've already done a basis of a investigation. And then I have steps I have to take and follow up on, and I have to follow back up with them. So that's one way they can report things.
Is that through a cell phone?
They can do it through a cell phone, they can do it online, they can do a call-in. Yep, and then we've got it posted throughout the building too, and it's right in all their Chromebooks too. There's links for it. So that's one method they can use. Another one is telling somebody. So if they tell, for in that situation, a student reported it to an officer immediately. He knew the officer, he reported it to an officer. Once it's reported, phone calls start happening. So I was called, Kristen was called, now we're on group chats, superintendent is notified, law enforcement's already doing their component, we're doing our component. Because there's always two pieces that have to start working, we have to work in harmony. So I start ours, we get working on it, we make decisions immediately of what we need to do next. And those decisions are based on what we know at that given time and what information keeps coming in. So thankfully in that situation, it was previous night, we had time that we could work some things out, and we had time to ensure that the steps were taken and that there was safety to opening school. And that probably, gosh, it was probably close to 9:30 when all the decisions were made that night. As we kept going to ensure, at like 7:30, we're like, yep, we're going to hold school. 8 o'clock, we're checking. 8:30, it was about 9:30 when we were like, we are absolutely good to hold school. We got everything in place. If it was to happen during a school day, because sometimes we'll get notices during the school day. So there's a couple things that can happen there. If we have concerns, it's again, we're immediately notifying our team, and an SRO is out. We're fortunate. We have one in each building. We have them in our district. We have a chief of police that's right down the road and always willing to help too. So we're very fortunate in that. But we're notifying them, and they're also guiding us a little bit, on what steps they have to do or what they're telling us, you need to do this right now. Like if one of them said, you need to go into secure mode, I'm not going to question, well, do you think we should? No, we're just doing it. If we ever question, and we had this last year, if there's a situation that could be potential, we just put it in secure mode. Secure mode is we are still operating within house, but the students are put away into their rooms. Doors are shut, building is locked from the outside, nobody's coming in or out. So that gives us time to process what we need to then make those next steps. Does that kind of answer some of your questions a little bit?
Yeah, but say it's not like an immediate threat. Do you think that students feel like they have somewhere to go without, it's not like an emergency, it's not someone threatening violence, it's just I need to report something? Do you think that students feel comfortable?
I do.
Okay.
Because we do a lot of, I'm not going to tell you we don't do screeners. We do screeners on everything reported. We're not going to look at a situation if she was coming to me and said, well, Johnny said that he's going to be, even as simple as Johnny's going to go beat so-and-so up after school. That can be a threat of violence. We're screening this, and we're going through. Our screener tells us what to do next. And we do get reports. Kids are really good at reporting.
And we're visible. We own stand-up desks that are on wheels, and you'll see us wheeling around the halls sometimes, or I'll go work in the cafeteria, Mrs. Paul works in the hallway. We're visible for them so they know if something happens. Even to the smallest, like somebody put toilet paper in the bathroom and it wasn't in the toilet. They come tell us so we can address it right away. And so we work a lot of times just in the hallway because visibility is one of the biggest things. We also have it's a school-wide or district-wide through BARC, which is if let's say kids are typing emails back and forth on their school device or even in their school email, so even if it's on their phone, yes, anything that is tied to us, it will flag. So it flags for bullying, it flags for suicide, it flags for
violence, guns,
drugs.
weapons,
drugs, and we get notifications and they come right to us. And we both have viewing rights. It also notifies dispatch. So dispatch will get notified if there is a high level. So we do have those options as well.
But they do report pretty good.
Yeah.
And our teachers are very good at making that connection so that way the student does feel comfortable and they come to us immediately. And don't get me wrong, there's times where I'm like, okay, what do we have now to stop for? But it's what you do, right?
As a parent of a very quiet child who I know he wouldn't, I want there to be something available, and I don't know that he would feel necessarily, this isn't that big a deal, you know what I mean? So I just didn't know if there was, if you guys are putting it out there that you can report on what you're saying, even if it's not like dire.
We do assemblies too, to promote okay to say. We also do assemblies to talk to the kids about our boot system and if there's a threat and when not to touch the boot. We also have an app on our phones, so if a boot is pulled, we are notified right away. I will tell you, like Renee said, it is wonderful having SROs in both buildings. We had a kindergartner pull a boot one day, and not knowing any better, and myself and Officer Doyle knew exactly where to go, and we were there within seconds, and Officer Sangino was up here at the high school, got the notification, and was in our building in less than 3 minutes. And there was no violence, obviously, with that, but we know if there is ever, minutes matter, seconds matter, so we are very grateful to have.
And our kids are, I mean, we're fortunate our community is very good at reporting too. You know, so like even in the situation last week, I received many phone calls that morning as parents were getting, their child was getting a Snapchat or somebody was telling somebody else and the parent was hearing it. So I do feel that the kids take it serious, all levels, and our community is very good at it too. And there's at least that relationship with one person that they'll report to. But yeah, they can do the okay to say, they can put an email, and I've had kids just email us this, that. Jada, what else have you got?
I was just gonna say, to your point maybe a little bit, you might be referring to more like the lesser threats or just
like general bullying or something, just something that you say, like, a kid would say, that's not okay, but do I really want to call it something about it?
I think say you do an okay job. I know I've read it on multiple surveys and stuff. Does your child have at least one safe adult that they know that they can go to? So as parents, as educators, I think we need to remind, and maybe our teachers, maybe we need to do reminders to our teachers to say, make sure you're telling children, think about who your one safe adult is at school, even if it's only one. Maybe some kids might have 5 safe adults at school, but think about who that one safe adult is that they can go to report those kinds of things. You know, not every kid is comfortable with every adult, so just go ahead.
Oh, so your survey?
Talk about that. I haven't tallied our student survey data yet. I was going to work on that tomorrow, but that is always one question. About 5 years ago, we were alarmed by our students feeling like they didn't have adults to talk to or they didn't have one safe person. So we have really put that initiative in there, and that has grown. Like we're almost to 90%, like 90% of our students feel like they have someone, whether it is someone that works at the cafeteria or on our cleaning staff or anything. And those quieter students, they might not go to their teachers, but they're going to Ms. Johnson, they're going to myself, they're emailing us. Our social worker has, in all of our Google Classrooms that we're using in high school, the students have the Let's Talk link, and sometimes it's just, I need to tell you this. And you know, so they do, and when they get a little bit savvy, they will just email us sometimes, and do you have a minute to talk? Or they'll just email us to tell us. They've learned the difference between bragging and reporting, and so I think I at least feel confident, and I have 2 students here in this building now. I feel confident that our students feel more comfortable than they did 5 years ago with adults, because we've really been working on that relationship level with our students, and then
And I don't know if they still do it, but they used to talk to the kids about it, like, I think my girls have like circle of trust, and you list like 3 adults you know you can tell anything to, and I'm not sure if they still kind of, but I've had in the past when I was coaching, even girls be like, tell me things and ask me to handle it, and I've gone to Renee or whoever, and just been like, hey, this was brought to my attention, they didn't feel comfortable saying it, but they knew after talking about it at school, like you can go to any trusted adult associated with the school and they'll back. So I don't know if they still discuss it.
It's like you, you get so much, in elementary school, there's so much hands-on, you're knowing exactly what's going on. And it's like kids coming here, it's like, I have no idea what's going on. Well, doesn't want to talk about it, you know, and I know there's things that go out, but there's still things that they want, that is their, you know, they're becoming independent, that's part of the process. But there still needs to be.
Well, and may I say too, I've gone through this, yes, I'm in the buildings, but my own kids have come to me with things, and I'll say something, they're like, don't tell me this, because sometimes I'll use you guys and be like, oh, they don't, I'm their safe adult, and I have to work in the school, so I guess now I have to deal with it, you know what I mean? Like, I don't always think about that. So maybe it is you as a parent that is the safe adult, and then we have to take it upon ourselves to take that next step, you know, and it is hard. Sometimes even as adults, we're like, oh, I don't want to have to deal with it, you know.
Even the smallest things, we try to tell, like, it's okay, like, you might think it's too small, but tell us, and we will make that.
Just ask the question or send an email, yeah.
I just want to make one, this is more for information, I guess, too. When we talk about secure mode, it's not just something is a threat or a danger, or we would put the building in secure mode if there was a medical emergency and we wanted to even just bring a student out if they're going out on a stretcher, because it's not everyone, like everyone doesn't need to watch that. So I just want to make sure everybody is aware. So like if your child comes home and says, we went into secure mode today, it doesn't mean there was a threat. We will try our best, obviously, to get communication out and be, again, I know we can only share so much, but it can be for medical too. And so it's just for information on that.
Sorry, we talked a lot. So I guess just elephant in the room a little bit. A lot of the feedback that I think people put out on Facebook and in the Ask Gladder or whatever those pages are is the bullying here is the worst that they've ever seen. Like, I don't know why, but that's how people feel. Now, I don't necessarily feel that way, but I will say that watching my older son, like, I don't know that they're bullies, but like I was saying earlier, their own friend group, I feel like they're awful to each other. So I don't know if it's just the age and that's why everyone's like, oh, bullying is terrible, or is there a real problem? How do we address it? Do they have too much time on their hands? Are they not being held accountable? These are not things I think. I'm just kind of speaking out loud about like what you start to hear in the community. The bullying is like topic after time. You just hear it often. Like bullying is the worst ever.
We do hear that, and we take it very serious when it is bullying. But again, very transparently, I think it's an overused word too.
Oh, I totally agree. 100%.
I mean, bullying is that repeated action over and over, and sometimes kids are just mean. Like what you did was mean. But if it's a one-time thing, not saying we don't address it, we do, but that's not bullying. So I mean, I just think there is a very large difference between, being mean versus bullying. So there's probably less of it, and I can tell you that is data we can pull because we do have to report bullying, weapons, drugs, sex to the state. So I mean, we can pull that because we differentiate that in Skyward. So I mean, if that is data that you guys want to see, like real data, we have that.
The kids feel that way. Like everyone's like, oh, the bullying is so bad. Do the kids feel that way though, or is that a parent observation from
the high school level? I can tell you two things. I'm never going to tell you it doesn't happen.
For sure.
Because yes, when we investigate, there are some situations where we're like, this is. And usually by the time that you've already been doing so much. Like, it's by the time it's gotten out to public and whatnot, we're already behind the scenes working on this for quite a while. And I'm not going to tell you that it's a one and done fix for it either. I think the other part is kids are very aware. We've been teaching them, right? We have to. We have to teach them every year. We're required to. We do assemblies, we do conversations, we do the SEL, like we have to.
Yeah.
So they're also becoming more familiar and comfortable in reporting it, which also brings that term up that much more.
Yeah.
And then there is the part where sometimes the kid will say, well, she's bullying me, and he's bullying me, and he's bullying me, and she's bullying me, and she's bullying me, because they each were mean one time. And unfortunately, finding a kid that's getting picked on by a lot of kids. Is it a bullying from her or from him? No.
Right.
But is it a general one that's happening? Yeah, it might be. So there's some differences in that. And junior high and high school is hard.
Yeah.
It is. Junior high and high school is hard. If you take yourself back to that age, you're in a situation in your life where you're around 400 to 500 other kids every day, all day long, and it's the only period in your life where you really have that. I mean, I go to work and so I'm surrounded by it. But you might go to work and you're surrounded by a different number, right? You have that flexibility of who you want to be with and who you don't want to be with. And the people that you don't like to be with, you just simply don't go around them. In high school, we're telling you, you got to get along, you got to figure it out. It's good learning skills, but it's also a very unrealistic forever plan.
I wonder if it would help the community by adding that to a student survey. Every year you have that data.
It is.
Okay.
Yep, it is.
Because I can't imagine that, and not to say it doesn't happen, but is it as bad as they like to say here and only here? Probably not. And
remember too, you might, when it gets to Facebook at times and social media, you might have 50 people hearing of the one same incident. So now you've got 50 conversations that are spreading to 70 conversations that spread to 80 conversations about still one incident. And it might be severe. I'm not saying it's not or it's not important, but it's still one incident. So you're not necessarily hearing about 10 incidences on just 10 conversations. And what we always hear, ourselves included on social media, is just like we teach kids when they're really little, when rumors, you do that little phone call, you pretend, you say it to one and the next, and it changes. People put a twist to it, or it's what they heard. Which is good information. It helps us dig through things further. But there's also elaboration to things too. But to tell you it doesn't happen, no, it happens.
Yeah.
I don't know that we'll ever completely get rid of it.
No, and the world is never going to get rid of it. That's the thing that I think drives me the most insane, to be honest, because it's like, don't send your kids to Beaverton, the bullying is awful
No.
there. I will say that.
And I could tell you, talking to other principals, they're going to tell me, it's terrible in our building. We get the same reports.
Yes.
It's just what groups you're hearing from within, right?
Yes.
So to compare it to another school district, I really can't.
Right.
But I can tell you it's happening everywhere.
For sure, and I just think if we could say that, the student population is saying they don't feel like they're being bullied, this astronomical amount, I don't know if that would help the community feel better about it, I don't know, but I see
Possibly.
that out there.
Seriously,
Yeah, and we have kids that'll move to our district. Oh yeah, I won't go to that district anymore. Bullying was terrible. Just as many kids that leave our district that say the same.
Yeah.
And I hate to see a kid feel that they have to move a school, or a family has to move a school to get that under control. That's sad no matter how you look at it. But yeah, we can come up with some more that and share out.
I just think maybe that help. I don't know.
Anything is helpful, right? Communication like that, any of it's helpful.
I can say that we have done quite a few junior high restorative circles with boys and girls this year.
Yeah, I believe that is bad voice, so yeah.
Mr. Inglis, our student support specialist, and myself, and Mrs. S, our behavior coach. Yes, we've done a lot from reports, and it might be the student who's the victim, it might be a friend of that student. I get reports so many different ways. It might be from their Google Classroom, that's a Let's Talk, an issue, and we have a priority on it. Is it high priority, medium, low, that type of thing. So we do quite a few. And sometimes repeated with the same group of kids.
Yeah.
Because one didn't know what's happening.
And I'm going to be honest too, high school, puberty's not fun. So, their emotions are all over the place, and it's not to undermine that emotion. That is a real emotion, it is a real perception in that given moment. But it does play into factors. And 90% of the time when we have those circles, the other student is saying, I didn't know that bothered you. You were joking with me, we were laughing together, so they weren't seeing those cues. And sometimes the person was laughing it off just to save face. So it's also teaching them, okay, that might have been funny to you. I used to tell my son all the time, just because you're laughing doesn't mean everybody else is laughing. And so it's not really always funny. It's hard. There's a lot of learning, there's a lot of conversations that happen with it.
So our goal is to keep these about an hour because we do want to respect everyone's time, and it is 6:37. I don't want to cut anyone off. If there's anything absolutely burning that you want to get out right now, again, it is not our goal to cut anyone off, but we want to be very respectful of your time. So if anyone has something that they just have to share before we leave, feel free.
You can always email us.
I'm working on my wait time.
Too.
Yes, we both have open door policies. Come see us, email, call. I'm outside every morning in the elementary too, so stop and talk to me. I love talking to people, so yes.
If you want us to sort of submit ideas for future.
If you have some, that would be fantastic.
Because we'd like to, that maybe we didn't have tonight.
Absolutely. And maybe you think of something later that you're like, oh, I really want to hear more about this. Absolutely. We would love that. We want.
One of you two would be the best way to do it.
There is a link. Mr. Govitz created a link for us when there was an attendance link on one of the posts. And so if you wanted to put it in that link, I believe he still has it active. Is that accurate? Yep. If you would like to put it in there, that would be a great place to put it. So, and we will attach a link as well when we send out the next date as it gets a little bit closer. So, anything else? Yes.
Thank you for doing this.
Yes.
Circling back to the beginning of your presentation, it truly is a community effort. The school is a huge part of the community, and going to back to some of the Facebook comments, it's really hard to read some of that stuff. So I think this is a great way to dispel some of those rumors of negativity.
Yeah.
Well, we
I'm
appreciate
super
you being
excited
here.
about
This
this
is,
turnout tonight,
yeah, like I'm so glad that that was not a big enough horseshoe. Like that's fantastic, so.
And as a high school, we have a PTO organization that's going to get started up. So if you are interested in that, because that is something that Sam and Trista are kind of bringing to us, if you want to be involved in any fashion, please reach out to one of us or reach out to me, and then I can kind of get you going. Because again, whatever we can do to help support these kids and make this a better home for everybody and to keep them here, not just during their high school years, but even beyond, that's what we really want. So.
And we're hoping that helps with that communication piece that you talked about from the high school.
Yep.
The junior, senior high is involving that.
So thank you again. But can't say it enough how much we appreciate you being here. So everyone can go and
have a good night. Thank you guys.
Drive safe.